All right, thank you, everyone. We will reconvene. We are on item 6 on the agenda, a discussion of the Flagstaff Town Hall regarding Indigenous Peoples. Ms. Smith?
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council. I'm Stephanie Smith, Assistant to the City Manager. The following presentation proposes a high-level strategy for further engagement with Flagstaff's Indigenous community. The purpose of tonight's work session specifically is to better understand your objectives as the Council to ensure successful engagement and also to receive some input from Council on some of the next steps. So on the screen here is an outline for tonight's presentation. First, I'm going to review the direction received from Council this past spring as just a reminder, and then I'll introduce the proposed strategy and its 3-step approach. Following that introduction, I will be looking for some input from Council, specifically input on the formats and some outreach components associated with this engagement, and then I'll conclude with some next steps. So in March of this year, of 2016, the City Council discussed organizing a series of input sessions to better engage Flagstaff's Indigenous community members. At the conclusion of the discussion, the City Council directed staff to work with Councilmember Putsova on developing a strategy that achieved this intent. Real quickly, I'd like to thank Councilmember Putsova for her work on this. She's put a considerable time and thought into this work, and I want you to know that her work is reflected in tonight's presentation. Some key considerations raised during the discussion this past March included having multiple input sessions on a diversity of topics. Also, Council discussed back in March the need to conduct this engagement outside the regularly scheduled Council meetings, perhaps in town hall style events. And lastly, and probably most notably, you can see the last bullet up on the screen, Council discussed that the town hall style engagement was just one phase, that were listening sessions and just the first phase of the engagement. Council discussed back in March the desire to come back together after the town hall events and work together as a council to follow up with actions based on the feedback received during the town hall events. So tonight's presentation is mostly focused on the steps to get to the action process associated with the engagement. So the goal of the strategy that you're hearing about tonight aims to really help us learn more about the challenges facing Native American population in our community and to foster a conversation about actions that address those challenges. And the strategy you're going to see tonight prioritizes partnerships with the community and also the need for lasting action as well as improvement. As I mentioned earlier this evening, Council has asked Councilmember Putsova to work with staff on developing the strategy. Several town hall event topics will be identified on a later slide, but I'd like to just mention that staff did not come up with these topics. These engagement topics were developed through Councilmember Putsova's listening sessions with representatives of the Native American community. So at this time, I'd like to turn to Councilmember Putsova so that she can share with all of us a little bit about the process as well as the individuals that she engaged to identify the topic areas.
Thank you, Stephanie. And I just want to quickly remind the origin of this this whole discussion. My original request was to engage the Council in discussion about declaring Indigenous Peoples Day, and not only as a symbolic gesture to recognize historic injustices that the Native American community has faced, but also, more importantly, engage in a process that would bring about meaningful improvements. Specifically, I ask that eventually, when we get to the point that we make progress on the action plan that comes out of the community forums. That the day to be recognized as the Indigenous Day would be the second Monday in October, Monday that a lot of people still recognize as a Columbus Day, and that would be a meaningful day for the Native American community to call the Indigenous Peoples Day. Over the months, this past spring and leading to the summer, I met with a very diverse group of people from all walks of life, people who belong to various tribes or have different tribal affiliations, people who were very diverse in terms of their age, their professions, and for me, it has been already a learning process, and I simply try to facilitate this process, and a lot of ideas that are presented, will be presented here, came out of those discussions. The original proposal that the community that I interacted with came up with had these listening and learning sessions spread through a longer period of time, and I think we can, discuss further the timeline and all the logistical elements of this proposal. But thank you.
Thank you. So based on the input received during these listening sessions, the following 5 topics are identified for Council's consideration as important day-to-day issues facing Native Americans in our community. You can see those on the screen. As proposed, these would be 5 separate town hall events. In addition, they would be organized by the city and also partner host organizations, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But just a couple considerations I offer to Council as you look at the slide and the topics is, first, you can see that these topics are not mutually exclusive. Second is that these topics are broad, but they're broad by design. The purpose of the listening sessions as proposed is to not overly define the topics, and that the input be based on an open interpretation of those that decide to attend these events. And third, I just wanted to emphasize, as I mentioned earlier, that this is just the first stage of a larger engagement strategy. And I'm sure all of us in the room today could come up with 20 more topics, but this is the start. And most importantly, the next stages of engagement are really going to be informed by what the city hears from these initial town hall events. So now I just want to take a few moments and talk about some of the mechanics of the town halls. I have a few slides to talk about how we actually could conduct these listening sessions, and I'm looking for some input from Council on the topics of partners, outreach, and the format. And first, in terms of giving staff input, I just wanted to offer one suggestion on how to frame this input to staff. Again, the town halls are the first stage, and as designed will inform the next steps of engagement. And so policy and actions plans will be discussed by the Council as currently designed after the town halls, as they will be developed in response to some of the feedback we hear at the events. So one framework to provide some input is to frame the input on how you may see the next stages of the engagement, and how can this listening stage of the engagement help guide Council with identifying policies and solutions in the future. Bless you. This slide here identifies just a listing of possible town hall partner hosts. Partnerships are going to be instrumental in the Council's engagement through this process with the Native American and Indigenous community. On the screen here is just a illustrative list of partners that could possibly co-host the town hall events with the city in collaboration. Details have not been worked out directly with these partners, as that would come following tonight's council discussion. And again, this is not a listing of full engagement partners. That list would be much larger. But this is merely just a listing of potential co-hosts for some of those topic areas that you saw on a previous slide. Now I'd like to share just a couple key components and recommendations for the town hall outreach to ensure that we do have greatest attendance, input, and participation. First, the outreach to attend the events will need to be comprehensive to encourage all people interested to attend. Second, it will be important to take advantage of the city's traditional formal communication channels to help market these events, but also with these events, staff is prepared to take advantage of some more informal outlets for outreach to increase participation, such as connecting with agencies and organizations in the community that serve Native American populations in our community. And lastly, it's going to be important to work with our community partners, our stakeholders, you, the City Council, to help get the word out about these events, to make sure we do have the best possible participation. Now goes for format and how best to facilitate receiving the information during this stage of the engagement. First is to offer formal opportunities for input at the town hall events, but also some informal outlets. Not everybody is comfortable speaking at a public town hall event, and staff recognizes that, so it's important to also offer additional opportunities such as written comments, online forums, etc. This proposal that you have before you tonight recognizes that it's also appropriate to collaborate with appropriate experts on these different topic areas to set up some baseline for the discussion. And you saw on a screen previously about some potential co-hosts. So what would this look like? Again, the details haven't been worked out, but perhaps for the health services town hall, we could partner with Native Americans for Community Action and their health services department. There's the Health Disparities Institute. There's also the Center for American Indian Resilience through the Dene College. So there are partners that could help present some information at the start of these town halls to help frame some of the discussions. And lastly, it's staff's intent that these events are, of course, designed to be non-threatening, supportive, and culturally respectful. So one final point that I'd like to present tonight related to the format of the town halls is that staff strongly recommends utilizing an outside facilitator to assist. Again, a facilitator that is external to the city organization, has experience working with Indigenous populations, has awareness on these topics, and also is skilled at facilitation. I enthusiastically recommend that we work with Dr. Chad Hamill as the facilitator for these events, to work with staff and our partner hosts to help conduct these listening sessions. Chad has all the experience I've listed on the screen and then some. He is the Vice President of Native American Initiatives at NAU. His job is to build relationships with the 22 tribes in Arizona. I'm impressed with his experience and insight he brings, and I think he'd be an excellent collaborator. But I do have a disclaimer that I do want to offer, and that is he's interested in serving in this role, but he hasn't committed to serving in this role. He's eager to hear about tonight's conversation before any formal commitment. So real quickly on some next steps for these town halls. It's going to be important for us, staff, to incorporate the feedback and input we received from council tonight. I know we have members of the community here who also want to provide input, and we'll need to incorporate that feedback and direction following tonight. We'll also work closely with our community partners on the specific content and format of the town halls, again, after tonight's feedback. And we need to prepare the marketing and outreach materials to ensure the optimal participation that we'd like to have at these town halls. And lastly, staff will need to take some time to prepare thoughtful input mechanisms so that there are diverse opportunities for people in our community to provide input on these topics, as it is an important discussion. So wanted to talk a little bit about the path going forward in regards to dates and locations. There are many different approaches to conducting these town hall events. We could conduct them over a series of a year, several months, or consecutively, and I think there could be benefits and challenges with all those options. So here's just one idea for consideration, as I'd like to just recognize there are lots of different opportunities here. One option is to conduct these town halls consecutively to take advantage of the momentum of the conversation that each one delivers. Hosting these consecutively on the same day can also offer some consistency and clarity in our outreach and messaging. And another thing we're looking for some feedback from council is having them in a consistent location so that the community is well aware, or traveling around the community and having them in different locations. So just one example that you can see on the slide here is what it could look like if we did consecutive, for example, at Flagstaff High School on Wednesdays over a series of 5 weeks. And again, those dates are just proposed at this time, looking for some council feedback. And I just want to conclude to ask for council's feedback on the proposal laid out tonight, including the process and format presented for this engagement. And it's important for us as staff to hear about council's indicators for success, again, so that the engagement strategy reflects a process that will set you as a council up for the next stage of the engagement, which is to come back following the town hall listening sessions and identify actions and policies in response to the input we receive. So with that, Mayor, I will turn it back to you.
All right, council ideas. One thing that occurred to me, Ms. Smith, is would we want to invite or somehow at least reach out to the tribal councils, at least in northern Arizona, if not the entire state, but invite, for example, all or a representative from the Hopi Council and Navajo Council at least, so that, I mean, if I was one of them, I'd go, gee, why wasn't I invited, so. And I like the idea of several evenings of this, so that if you have a particular interest in one subject area, you can kind of pick and choose. I think that's a good idea. Trying to do something this big in a one-day thing is good if you're coming from out of town and we're gathering people, but a lot of times you end up sitting through parts of the program that are of not that much interest to you, and you have more interest in another area. So I think this is a good idea like that. Is Flag High willing to give us their facility?
Mayor, Council, I did look at the availability. I haven't heard they're available, and I've submitted a reservation request. I haven't heard back, but I know they're available.
Okay, Ms. Evans?
So first of all, thank you, Eva, for bringing this forward. I do have a couple, of questions. First of all, I think the economic impact of tribes here in our region is extremely important, and I'm not sure where it is in one of these sessions or if it should be a standalone session on its own. But I do think that we as a community need to understand what the economic impact is of tribes here in our particular region, and I'd like to see something like that, some type of discussion to bring that out. I'm also trying to find out, is there going to be a written report issued after each one of these sessions, or is it going to be one report at the end of what was discussed with the information that was given at these sessions? I think that's extremely important. I think that needs to be on our website as well as available in written form for individuals who would like to have that information to take with them. I'm also wondering if these town halls are going to be taped or streamed live for individuals that can't necessarily be at one of these town halls, because I think the information is extremely important. So I don't know if we can either tape it so we can have it on our website so other people can actually look at it, or if we can stream live from that location. But I'd like to see us do that. I'm wondering about translation services, if those would be needed, and if so, have we thought about that? And then lastly, wondering if a partnership with NAPTA might be appropriate to see if we can get bus service there for individuals in the outlying area that might need a ride to actually get to these town halls.
Thank you. Councilmember Evans, one quick comment on the written report. Documenting the input received is very much a part of the strategy going forward. If it would happen after each or at the end, I think would depend on the timing of the town halls. If they're consecutively every week, I think it would be hard to submit a written report in between. But absolutely, the written report is going to help direct future efforts. So that's very much in our plans to provide.
I think any written material or PowerPoints or whatnot that are used at these town halls need to be available for people who are not at the town halls to at least have. I don't know if that's a link on our website, but I do think that's important. I also think that the written report, or reports that come out of it, need to have that information with them as well, so people understand what was being referred to.
Thank you.
Mr. Overton.
Steph, what do you envision as like the format for each evening? So would it be more like panelists and experts, or is it more dialogue among groups or among the entire party that's there? I mean, have we thought through any of that? Or is that more up to the facilitator and kind of what we're trying to accomplish within each topic?
Councilmember Overton, I think some of the details are still going to be worked out in partnering with the facilitator and the co-host. We are, as currently presented, will have some presentations at the start, but it's really meant to hear from attendees. So setting up a facilitation model that is going to really facilitate hearing from as many people as possible at the event. So I don't necessarily see panel discussions, but some type of presentation at the start, and then opening it up for conversation and hearing from those that choose to attend is going to be really important.
Okay. Thanks.
Ms. Butzva.
Since this topic really came out of the community and community's interest, and I do want to share perspective that, after this was published on Friday, that and I mentioned it before, that the timeline is perhaps a little bit too aggressive and may not leave enough time for reflection. And I would actually recommend to change it just a little bit and start with 2 sessions in November, November 2nd and November 30th, so there's enough spread time to prepare. Also, you kind of learn from that first experience. And I would switch the topics a little bit. Obviously, this is just to kind of frame and highlight some of the issues that really are we're going to hear throughout the whole series, and that the racial relations and cultural and social justice. I would recommend that we start with that, and we learn a lot about what the Native American community faces, and so we have some basic understanding that also affects the other topics. And then perhaps, going to November 30th, I would suggest to go with homelessness. We're going to just start, the cold winter months, and that can be appropriate, and then, going maybe with these other topics. And the other comment I've heard was that the 2 hours, while it may seem like a long meeting, especially when we are hearing from people and learning about their stories, may not be enough, and it would be better if we are a little more flexible, so maybe from 5:30 to 8:30, and just keeping it slightly more flexible and open, because I think some of these topics will be, attract a lot of interest. So those are my kind of initial recommendations to change the process. And the other, I know we're going to come to December, there's going to be holidays, everybody's going to be very busy. The idea is to have as many council members at these events present, and perhaps, if we start with November and then maybe skip December and go and pick up again in January, maybe more feasible kind of schedule. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
All good thoughts? Any other suggestions, comments? I suppose there's no specific timeline, no hurry to get it done. No. The one good thing about doing it weekly is you get into a routine. Every Wednesday night I'm going to be going to this thing. But I can see what Ms. Putseva is saying too. There's give it time. So yeah, whatever you guys want to do. Well, let's hear from the public on this. Jamie Yazzie.
Hello, good evening. My name is Jaime Yazzie, and I am an NAU graduate student. I grew up in Ganado, Arizona on the Navajo Nation, and I'm currently residing in Flagstaff as a student. And so I'm here in support of Indigenous Peoples Day and denouncing Christopher Columbus Day. As you all know, Christopher Columbus contributed to ethnic genocide, rape, and kidnapping of indigenous people across America. And so with this comes historical trauma that is embedded in our indigenous communities. And Christopher Columbus Day perpetrates stereotypes, it encourages racist rhetoric and thoughts that indigenous people do no longer exist. So here in Flagstaff, there is still ignorance, there's still racism, and deeper underlying societal issues that isolate the indigenous community. So I'm glad that this is coming through the city council and that there will be town hall meetings. I think it's important to reject emblems and symbols that still remain today of white settler colonialism. And so I think that one thing that should be added to one of the topics is environmental justice and acknowledgement of sacred sites of indigenous people, because as you all know, in current day, we are still trying to defend our sacred sites. We're still trying to protect them from resource extraction, from tourism. And there are also individuals in Flagstaff who have relocated from the reservation to Flagstaff because there's lack of access to clean water. There is contaminated areas due to uranium. There's also the threats of resource extraction from the fossil fuel industry. So our community, native and non-native, should acknowledge the impact that celebrating Christopher Columbus has, and also the historical trauma that our people face today. And so in order to move forward, I think that it's important to consider all topics, and these are great ones. So that is all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. McCarran Marks.
Okay, hello, my name's McCarran Marks, and I'm the my clans are near the water, born for edge water, and I am against Columbus Day because Columbus was a person who so-called founder of North America, and he wasn't the first to find it because long before he came, Vikings found the place first, really, and he's the one they call a hero because he mostly killed a lot of Native Americans, and he enslaved many of Native Americans, and people even call him a war hero. Even there was a lot of war heroes throughout history, and they don't even have their own days. So why just him? Is it because he became the first president, and also he encouraged slavery so they can make money? But this is because the colonists were lazy, so he mostly made the people lazy because they had to use the slaves, and that's mostly all I can say. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Macias Ruben Marks.
Morning or evening. Gat tohan in the shle tabahan bashichin ash dashanella kaidana dashache. She'em Macias Marks in the she. I am near the water, born for Edgewater. My maternal grandfather is Red Bottom, and my paternal grandfather is the people that move around. I come here today to present the statement of the Flagstaff Indigenous Peoples Day Working Group to the Flagstaff City Council. We must start by reminding you that Indigenous peoples have long been a part of the community of Flagstaff and lived here before Flagstaff was established. Yet our lives and cultures have faced serious mistreatment here both historically and today. On March 8th, 2016, a statement signed by nearly 200 community members was delivered to Flagstaff City Council to support a meaningful process to address issues faced by Indigenous peoples in Flagstaff. The impetus of this proposal have been the nationwide movements to declare Indigenous Peoples Day in recognition of historical injustices faced by Indigenous peoples throughout the U.S., as well as our resilience and our guardianship of this land. Last year, nearly a dozen cities across the U.S., including the entire state of Alaska, renamed Columbus Day Indigenous Peoples Day. And that movement has not ceased. The statement we delivered recognized this opportunity as a necessary and proper beginning by which the city of Flagstaff can work with Indigenous people, impacted by Flagstaff city policies to honor Indigenous histories, respect Indigenous contemporary holistic well-being, and work intentionally and diligently for the benefit of future generations of Indigenous peoples. Tonight we would like to reiterate so it is clear that this process is one of accountability, and these changes must be systematic, culturally appropriate, transparent, and implemented through policy actions of the Flagstaff City Council. In review of the current proposal, we urge the following changes. 1. Town hall sessions should extend beyond the month of October. We would like to propose 2 in November, with the remainder beginning in January. This would benefit those who may be busy with elections and family events towards the end of the month and in December. 2-hour sessions.
Mr. Marks, hold on. Ms. Salzberg, Mr. Marks states here that he's speaking for 10 people. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. So he gets extra time.
2-hour sessions are restrictive. In recognizing and honoring traditional protocol for prayers and introductions, we recommend 3-hour sessions with allowances for additional time as needed. 3, we also strongly believe that local organizations or town hall partnering hosts should be free to choose a facilitator, moderators. This can ensure that the facilitators of the town halls have more clear and immediate knowledge of the issues and communities involved. One outcome of the process will be declared Indigenous Peoples Day on the second Monday in October of every year. And in the same declaration, a call upon those that still recognize this day as Columbus Day, including the federal government and financial sector, to replace it with Indigenous Peoples Day. We also anticipate a call to NAU and Arizona's state government to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day. 5, we also plan to help facilitate breakout sessions on the Saturday following each town hall. These would add an autonomous, community-driven dimension to the overall process. In that regard, we will be calling for a community-driven meeting in early October that will be held to educate community members about the process and assist in outreach and greater participation for this process. We would like to see students, business leaders, spiritual practitioners, elders, activists, and all those who care about health and well-being of Flagstaff to engage in this process. We recognize that this council is in the midst of elections, and we sincerely encourage your participation in these town halls. Your attendance, even if not re-elected, and this applies to those seeking office as well, can demonstrate that this council takes these issues seriously. It is up to us, by nature of our participation, to make this opportunity effective. We want Flagstaff to join with our other communities throughout the country who are taking steps towards just and better relations. We believe that this proposal, when approved, will move us in that direction. Lastly, if we find ourselves in this process as good relations that recognize we have common gains in restoring dignity and respect for all those who share our place in this land and in this community, then this year should be the last year we mark Indigenous Peoples Day without the support of the Council. On behalf of the Flagstaff Indigenous Peoples Day Working Group. Thank you. And for my words, so I've told you I stood here before a year ago to emphasize on what was happening not only to me but the people that I cared for around me. I'm still being called names for dressing traditional, still being humiliated in classrooms with my headband by white men who think they are warriors. Still am frowned upon in the society that I choose to live in the school I attend to, as loser or imperfect or Indian or man that stands for everybody but his people. Still get that, but as we grow up, we are birthed from the dark world where we appreciate to learn to hear, feel, smell. Where the woman brings us into this world, the glittering world, where our grandfathers and our mothers and fathers are there with us at birth. We learn to appreciate what we have around us. We learn to appreciate our youth, our education, our health, where we live, where our home is. And being Indigenous may sound bad because across the nation, many people emphasize that there's a lot of homelessness, drugs, alcoholism. A lot of people that represent our people aren't believing they're home. They do not believe that. They do not have a home to go to, elderlies to fall to, families to be with. We've all felt that. We've all been mothers and fathers, daughters and sons, brothers and sisters. Some do not have that, and they wander the world lost, looking for that. And emphasizing that there is a hope that we can restore what was lost to us decades, centuries ago, can come back. A sense of home, sense of hope, sense of faith, sense of love, sense of family, a community where we make our homes wherever we are, wherever we walk, like it was before they built houses. A home is where hope, love, ideas, the birth of a human being grows, where our community comes together to celebrate that and put our minds together and change the world around them, not the landscape, but Mother Earth, to live with it, to see the beauty of it, to stand together as a nation, to be the change they wish to see in the world. Whether it's helping your daughter at her homework, your son in sports, your grandmother with her groceries, your grandfather with the wood. To be that fire and be the success. Be that one person that everybody in your community needs. To rewrite history where every man is created equally. Every man has the same equality, not to relive it as we have been for the past century. To have happiness roam freely and not shackled to the ground. To have your people become extraordinary to where they can change the world with their ideas. Because ideas aren't ideas, they are perspectives that we all have. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Marnie Vale.
Thank you, Council, for listening to what I have to say. I wanted to speak in support of the Indigenous Peoples Day and the process as it is being developed here for making that happen. There are many people nationally and internationally who are passionate and moving in the direction of movements like Indigenous Peoples Day. And I and many others in Flagstaff are also working on a Truth and Reconciliation Coalition, Northern Arizona. And we have a mission statement that reads as follows. Truth and Reconciliation Coalition of Northern Arizona is a citizen coalition committed to uncovering and archiving the truth of systemic injustices and giving voice to this legacy of intergenerational trauma in affected individuals and communities. The work we are doing is a recognition that the foundation of this country is marred by the Holocaust against Native people and the murder of people and the taking of land and the breaking of treaties. The economic structure of unfettered corporate capitalism is made possible by the institution of slavery, and now in part by continued slavery with the use of prison labor and mass incarceration. These atrocities and others cannot be reversed. They live in one way or another in the psyche of every American. The only hope for some peace and some happiness and hopefully some healing is if we have a process in our communities of reconciliation, of truth, of really looking at the truth. And I see this process for Indigenous Peoples Day as beginning to look at the truth of what has happened and how we can do better. So, and then I'm hoping that a lot of this work with Indigenous Peoples Day dovetails right into a truth and reconciliation process, and hopefully someday a commission where we can really get to the root of a lot of these problems and find some measure of healing, although that's a tall order for the trauma that a lot of people have suffered. So thank you, and hopefully we can move forward with all of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. John Victoria.
Good evening. I'm sure that at times we falsely assume that things are doing really, we've made so much phenomenal progress with Native Americans. Have you seen any of the pictures from Standing Rock? The blood dripping out of the dog's mouth, the blood dripping from the dog's nose, that's Native American blood that's dripping there. We're not scalping the Indians. We're not cutting off their heads. That term, redskin, that doesn't have to do with their native skin. That has to do with the color of their skin after they were scalped and after their heads were cut off. Their skin would turn red. And that's where that term came from. I think that thing there should read, it's a little paternalistic, isn't it? The Flagstaff City Council invites the community. I think that's a little paternalistic. I think what it should say is the indigenous people of northern Arizona invite the city council. That's what I think that should say. And and who wrote that? How many Native, I know we can get in there and we can do it. We can make some changes with Native American input. How much Native American input went into that document? I don't know. I bet it wasn't too much. Back there towards the end, the last page, it says action goals. How about some respect goals? How about if we do that? How about if we make a change and have respect goals and honor goals and cooperation goals? How about if we do that? This is an Anglo document. This doesn't seem to me to be a Native American document. That term, paternalistic, just keeps coming back. Let's print these up, pass them out to the Native Americans. And Calvin Coolidge, when they completed the dam there, all the whites sat down and had china and silver, and all the Native Americans were given a brown bag with a sandwich and an apple. When is this crap going to stop? It needs to stop today. I mean, since we got here, did you know that the second most active slave trade in the United States of America was with Native Americans? The first was, of course, with black people. So, I think we might have the cart before the horse here. Let's let the horse pull the cart, okay? I mean, it's just, that question just lingers with me. When is it going to end? Look at Standing Rock, the desecration of the burial grounds, and then tell me that, boy, we're pretty good with the Native Americans. We're doing really well. So that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, that's all the public speaking request. Council, did you have any further suggestions for Ms. Smith? Ms. Putzva?
I would just recommend that we stay flexible when it comes to facilitators and see how, obviously after talking to Chad about the outcomes of this meeting, and also perhaps if there are other suggestions for other facilitators, I think it would be great if maybe people can contact you with recommendations. I think it would be great. I really hope that we can structure it in such a way that is really driven, the process is driven by the Native American community, because I think they deserve all the respect, and they deserve that we follow their lead in how these issues should be discussed and addressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, Ms. Smith, thank you very much for your help, and thank you, Ms. Putzeva, for your input.